Hello and welcome to the Arise interview, where we take time to reflect on the big stories from the news and on the fortunes and affairs of the world in an hour of conversation with commentators, analysts and thought leaders. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Coming up in the next 60 minutes, can renewable energy provide new, reliable power supply for Nigeria? It's a question that's been asked repeatedly now for many years, and while the answer may seem obvious, not much has happened so far in the field of renewable energy in the country. So why is that? And can we anticipate an important acceleration soon as Nigeria continues to attempt to tackle the problems that have hindered the growth of electricity in the country? We'll speak with the founder of a leading Nigerian renewable energy company, Malik Ado-Ibrahim. And later, the worsening conflict in Ethiopia that's taking the country to the brink. As federal troops battle to control the northern region of Tigray and the Ethiopian government urges Tigrayan forces to surrender, the United Nations expresses grave concern about the impact of the war on hundreds of thousands of civilians who aren't being protected from the deepening hostilities. We have assessment from an Ethiopian political analyst and human rights activist. Plus, in his latest move to advance the stalled presidential transition in the United States, President-elect Joe Biden, still striving to take the sting out of America's embattled politics, picks a veteran political operative and the ultimate Washington insider to be his new chief of staff at the White House. We have reaction from a Republican strategist and supporter of Donald Trump coming up. Now, about 60% of Nigeria's population live in rural areas, and only about 20% of them have access to electricity. And of course, power supply is being rapidly outstripped by massive population growth. Nigeria has one of the fastest growing populations in the world and one of the lowest per capita incomes. Expanding mains electricity to many areas without power and ensuring steady supply in regions where there is access has been a challenge to most Nigerian administrations, including the current one. So increasingly, attention is being focused on renewable energy sources, especially solar and wind energy, and ways of funding them. But they are, of course, enormously costly, and there are huge infrastructure challenges, not to mention a powerful lobby that wants to stick to the status quo.
Part of our solution is to use solar as a fuel and use lithium-ion batteries as a generator and storage system. And so we created a company called BicEnergy, BIC meaning best in class. And that product that we designed and we keep fine-tuning is an Africanized solution. We compete with companies like Tesla and Mercedes-Benz on their power solutions. And we've been in competition with these companies over the last 5 years and have come up on top of late with some of the Africanized solutions that we have.
Well, the man you heard speaking there is my first guest today. He's perhaps more famous for his role in the Formula One Motor Racing Championship than he is for his involvement in renewable energy. Nevertheless, having been a former United Nations Under-Secretary for Renewable Energy and now the founder of a leading renewable energy company, that's what he's here to talk about, mostly. Prince Malik Ado-Ibrahim, thank you very much indeed for coming in. Let's just say that you're the latest in a long series of people who have been passionate about improving power supply in Nigeria. Clearly, for whatever reason, they've all failed because there is still an enormous power pinch in this country. What makes your passion different?
Thank you very much for having me today. I think the most important part of my thinking for where I've introduced myself into this market is the fact that we're sitting in Africa. I mean, that just connotates sunshine all the way through. And I've developed products and content that allows us to harness that power. You know, Nigeria's energy deficiency comes from this long line of old school thinking. I think conventional power, we've had the same power station since the 1960s. and there's an opportunity for us to switch to a more state-of-the-art power form of supply, and that's how and why I got into bringing that technology home.
And of course, the fact that Nigeria has never really been able to do it with those traditional forms of power, in a sense, almost perversely gives this country the opportunity to move beyond that into something much more modern, much more user-friendly, yes, and much more environmentally friendly.
Yes, I think that point is very clear, because the time it takes from planning to gestation to execution on conventional power is usually the lifetime of an administration, and there's no continuity there. Renewable energy, especially solar and battery power, allows you to implement that power source immediately where needed, and that would typically, if you plan properly and create a smart grid, that could take 6 months rather than 8 years. And that's why I think, like technology on the telephone industry, Nigeria can leapfrog technology very quickly and implement state-of-the-art technology in the power supply as well.
Well, I suppose the obvious question is, why hasn't it done so? What has stopped this country from harnessing all those potential forms of energy? As you said, solar power in abundance, I mean solar, sunlight in abundance, wind energy and so on. The technology is there, the know-how to do it is also clearly available.
Yes. Conventional power has a legacy involvement in pretty much every country. In Africa, the GEs, the Siemens, the Kellogg Brown & Roots of this world are invested in us staying in that old school technology because there are World Bank finances and all those sort of legacy elements that are in play. And I think that the leadership that has taken over a lot of African countries is still in the old mindset. It's a modern game now. Renewable energy, it's quick, it's implementable on various scales, and it's a question of leadership. Are you willing to take that punt to say, yes, I can implement this, and then strategizing where you want that power, where can it be implemented best, and that's where I think leadership needs to be.
Because of course, while Nigeria is sort of stuck in the mud at the moment. I mean, straddling the fence, trying to figure out which direction it should go in terms of sort of sticking with the old or going with the new and that sort of thing. I mean, the rest of the world is moving inexorably forward, and everybody is steadily leaving Nigeria behind, which is why I have questions about you talking about Siemens, because a lot of those people are investing in renewable energy as well.
Yes, and I think that's where initially when the Buhari administration came in, the thought was on an energy mix, a blend of the old and the new, creativity in that position of leadership as a country. We are signatories to the Paris Accord. We haven't implemented those steps necessary. I don't know if it's really the fact that we are not ready for that. I just think we haven't designed ourselves for that kind of modernity, and that's really what's holding us back. But we're seeing some really marked steps. I've done some pilot programs in Edo State and Ondo State with Niger Delta Power Holding Company.
You did something in Katsina State.
I did, yes.
Right.
So we've built projects in which we can implement our state-of-the-art thinking with the solar, which only works in the daytime, and then battery power, which harnesses that power and delivers it at night. We've come together with a lot of industry, and really right now I think the one I'm really proud of is what we're doing in Adamawa State. There's a large dairy, probably the largest dairy facility being built there, and we've been able to implement 5 megawatts of power into that product, and that is really something that's never been done in Nigeria before, to use state-of-the-art renewable energy in an industry and create change that way.
The point of argument, though, is that Nigeria, as you said, has an abundance of fossil fuels, such as gas, which is its main source of electricity generation at the moment, but it has never been able to generate enough and utilize that gas to capacity. I mean, what makes you think it'll be any different with sunlight and wind and all the rest of it? Because it's much more fundamental than that, isn't it, the problem?
The problem is fundamentally, I think, a mindset change. We have to pivot into renewables. Every country is struggling. Joe Biden, just before his election, announced that he was going to pivot into, a clean fuel and away from fossil fuel for the U.S., and that was an uproar. The renewable energy industry employs more than the oil and gas sector in the U.S. and can do the same thing here. If we look at the long-term effects of what we could do with renewables, certainly the employment is one of the big things that we can see coming out of this. But if you go to fossil fuels, it's dying. It's not
Absolutely.
regenerative.
Yeah.
The sun comes out every day. The wind must blow. The Almighty has given us this amazing product, and we have to harness it just as we've harnessed what's in the ground. Why don't we harness
then what
what's
you're
above
saying
the ground?
has been said. I mean, I've been hearing this said for the past decade.
Yes.
I just don't understand why that does not appear to be the obvious way to go. Because even in America, in spite of the uproar, in spite of Donald Trump and his focus on those sort of fossil fuels and so on and so forth, I mean, if you go to places like California, if you go to a lot of those places, I mean, electricity is moving on. You come to the UK, electric cars everywhere.
Yes. We started this pioneering effort knowing we were going to get banged around a little bit. In fact, in our office, we've built it so that it's based on renewables and battery power. There's a wow factor when people come there, but there's still a disconnect between, I need to see and hear that generator going off rather than this silent, sweet sound of the sun producing energy. And I think until we have the right person in the position to push for that energy mix to be a mixture of conventional and renewable, Nigeria and other African countries are going to suffer for this.
So if you were given charge of Nigeria's energy sector, what would you do? What would be at the heart of your plan?
Well, I think first of all, because we're so blessed in the north of this country with the Sahel region, the Sahara, is to try to affect a renewable policy based on solar generation. We have the wind corridor in the northwest, Sokoto has that. It wouldn't be very difficult for us to say, okay, we have a Marshall Plan for power. We must produce 20,000 megawatts by a certain date. And in order to do that, let's manufacture the solar panels in country. Let's create jobs that way. Let's create an energy farm that can not just produce energy for Nigeria, but because we're already selling our conventional power to countries like Chad and Niger and Cameroon, we can do the same thing. It is an energy product that can actually harness so much more than just the sun, but employment, and industry in the northern part, and actually feed that power onto the grid.
Right.
There's no reason why it should be only one way from the south to the
But
north.
of course, critics would say, well, you would say that, wouldn't you? I mean, your business is renewable energy.
Yes, but I tell you what, I come from a different side. I come from the first family to drill for oil in this country. In 1973, my father was the pioneer of the oil and gas sector by drilling for oil and gas, and I learned my business trade in the oil and gas sector. But everything moves, everything has its time.
Right.
And we have to move with that. BP is moving from the oil and gas sector
Absolutely.
into the renewable sector. Total has done the same. Chevron is doing the same. Even the electrical companies are moving. So we must pivot. We can't stay stagnant with this time and this Jurassic power.
And that's
We
the
need to
key,
focus.
to be progressive.
Absolutely.
Stay with us. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat about renewable energy and how it can provide new power for Nigeria. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Eniegolo. Now, my guest is perhaps best known as being the first African to work in a top commanding position at Formula One, but Malik Ado-Ibrahim is also a noted expert in renewable energy. He served as a United Nations Under Secretary for Renewable Energy in the early 2000s, and since then he's focused a lot of time and energy on developing non-fossil fuel, hydrocarbon forms of energy. He's overseen the construction of a 100 megawatts solar power station in Katsina State in northern Nigeria, and has helped to push the renewable energy agenda forward in this country as well as across Africa. And Malik Ado-Ibrahim is still with me in the studio. Thank you for staying with us. And I must say this to you, I love the name Malik. I mean, I said to myself when I was having my first child that if it was a boy, I was going to call him Malik. It wasn't a boy. But I don't have
You
any
could have had a
regrets.
Malika then.
No. I chose Yasmin.
Okay,
which
well,
I
just
thought
as
was a
lovely a name, yes.
But tell us a bit about your company and what you're doing in the energy sector right now. I know you touched on it earlier.
Yes. I think that typical of anything we do in Africa, you have to lead by example. You can't expect that it's going to be handed to you to do. So a few friends of mine that worked in the Formula One sector decided, well, what we want to do is create a product that was very Africanized in its thinking. Typically, a European firm will take renewable energy to reverse stored power back onto the grid. We don't have that luxury. Our power needs are now, and they must be immediate. So we created a very specific product that allows every home, any industry, any healthcare facility to run 24 hours a day using solar harnessed power from the sun and battery power using lithium ion or freshwater, crystalline water for battery power. And we're seeing gradual uptake of this as a company. It won't be easy, and we know that, but we've been very lucky and had some very big breaks.
Well, I was going to ask you, I mean, what challenges have you faced I mean, you work across Africa, yes, but in Nigeria in particular. I mean, is there a lot of confusion, for example, in regulation, problems with sort of skilled manpower, you know, investment risks, agreements not honored, that sort of thing?
Well, the last part is very telling. We were one of 14 companies that had power purchase agreements signed with this administration, with NBET, with the CBN and the Ministry of Finance to build 100 megawatt solar plants around the country. And that was 4 years ago. Nothing was honored. Contracts were signed. We're still stuck in the same, not one piece of glass on the ground.
I mean, have you been told why? Is it a lack of funding or what is it? Because, I mean, if they'd got to the point of signing agreement, yes, they must have been pretty serious at that point.
Well, you know, the conventional thinking is that there was pressure from
the powerful
lobbies. Right. Because I do believe that if Africa has a taste of what renewables can do, it'll be hard to wean us off that, that kind of power. It's immediate, and it doesn't rely on the huge turbines. It creates a lot of jobs, and it really is a panacea for a lot of things that Africa is dealing with at the moment. And if we do not have leadership that points us in that direction, individuals just can't do it. We can only do very significantly small amounts of things, but nothing that will really make a big hurrah anywhere. So it's a bit difficult.
And talking about leadership, I wonder if you've done business in Ghana and how you might compare Accra with Abuja in terms of how they are dealing with the energy crunch.
Well, I think there's very little difference between the two. The key element is that I do believe that Nigerians are a lot more advanced. We do think a little bit differently. Our population is a lot more dense. And what happens with that is that it's really sometimes confusing in the minds of leadership is which way should I go? Okay, tried and trusted is where I should stay. I don't want to try to be a hero and go a different way. Ghana, smaller, a little bit more malleable. They'd like to try things a little bit more than we do here, and that would be the only real difference. Of course, I love my country, so I would always say that things are always going to be better here.
Yeah, naturally. And I don't know, as an aside, you might have heard today that the former Ghanaian president, Jerry Rawlings, has died at the age of 73. I mean, what's your reaction to that?
Well, certainly, may his soul rest in peace. I think he's a man of his own time. He did what he needed to do for his country at the time in which they needed some sort of panacea for their problems.
Right.
I don't see that sort of leadership doing anything in this modern day and age of things like what we're talking about, renewable energy, or you know, the End SARS movement. He would have probably approached it in a more draconian way. Social media, I mean, all these things that are affecting this evolution of Africa now are going to have to be dealt with more modern thinking, younger minds. And as I said, may his soul rest in peace, and our hearts go out to the Ghanaians for their loss. But
Sure.
I think that we're now looking for a stronger African leadership that's pointing us all in the right direction.
And you were, of course, for a time, United Nations Under Secretary for Renewable Energy. Yes. So you have, I mean, you're experienced in finding ways to develop renewable energy solutions for global economies.
Yeah, so at IREO, what we were trying to do was find solutions, because there isn't a one-fits-all plan. We really needed to look at what was adequate for one region, was inadequate for others. If you go further down than Nigeria, even if you just go as far down as Congo, Brazzaville, their irradiation from the sun is a lot different. You would probably use more water than sun there. As I said, the Nigeria and this region in West Africa is so blessed with a lot of things that we're taking too lightly.
Right.
For us,
too relaxed, let's put it that way.
Yes, because it's convenient. It's there. Yeah. The oil's there. Well, let's use it. And that hard work that's needed to pivot is not there. And I do say that there is this conversation of whether renewables are expensive. I buck that trend in every way possible. Renewables are not that expensive. What is expensive is not doing the work that is necessary.
But you still have to find the money. And you've still got to put new infrastructure in place, don't you?
Absolutely. But I think there's more new thinking than infrastructure.
Right.
Because if you realize that countries that are like Germany are focused on renewables, that has moved their industry in a completely different direction.
Moved their economy forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they've gone away from nuclear power, which everybody thought was going to be that magic power solution. We are blessed with so much. All we need to do is focus. Where is our Marshall Plan? Countries were destroyed by war and rebuilt. Japan and Germany.
Absolutely.
They are kings in renewables. They focused where it was, they decided they were going to go in that direction, and they implemented that plan.
So at the heart of it is leadership.
At the heart of everything in Africa, if you ask me, is leadership. Our leadership is a bit old. It's most African countries in the 60th year of their existence.
Right.
We haven't had a legacy of anything other than what the colonial leaders have left us with. But we have some amazingly agile and fruitful minds that can take us to where education has taken our peers in other countries. Will leadership allow us to go there? Probably not, because you need to be a visionary to do that. So I think that what we're going to see in Africa in the next 5-10 years is people taking that power, because no one's going to give it to you. You need to take that power and create power. And our adage amongst ourselves is that if you want to stay in power, you better give your people power.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're looking at.
So just before we go, let's talk about a bit more about you personally. I mean, you're a race car driver, so obviously you like things that move very fast indeed.
Yes, well, I have a father that brought us up on speed, and we just got into that whole ethic of getting things done quickly. Have a little bit of military interest, so everything is just on calculated time and speed. And I got into motor racing. I got into playing polo. I do a lot of rally driving, and I've enjoyed that. And it's been a completely different thing for most Africans, but a lot of fun at the same time.
Well, I have to say I've enjoyed talking with you. And please come back and talk with us more extensively, because you sound like a fascinating person. Malik Ado-Ibrahim, thank you ever so much.
It's a pleasure, sir. Thank you.
And you're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead, including the worsening conflict in Ethiopia. It's taking the country to the brink. Stay with us.